My name is Maddie DiMarzio, and my informative speech is on the Barbie doll. 2 Barbie dolls are sold somewhere in the world every second. She is an 11.5-inch piece of plastic fashion doll that is played with, collected, and treasured. Most of this information is from MadeHow.com's article on How Products Are Made, the Plastic Doll. Millions of children play with Barbie dolls every day. Barbie is an innovation in the history of toys and a major influence on children around the world. Dolls have evolved over centuries, from religious symbols to playthings by children to highly prized collectibles. Some of the earliest dolls date to around 2000 BC in Egypt. The dolls were made into simple paddle shapes. These were not made as children's playthings, but as symbols of gods in fertility ceremonies or in tombs. Next, the ancient Greeks started making dolls, but theirs were made of baked clay. As civilization started to evolve, so did the doll. They became much more detailed, especially for those who could afford it. During the late 14th century, also known as the medieval period, doll making became commercial. Dolls were now being made by companies to be sold. Later in the 15th century, wooden dolls started to appear in Europe, especially in Germany. Germany at the time was becoming the center of doll making. France, though, was not far behind in production or in sales. Wooden and wax dolls stayed popular through the 16th century, but papier-mâché dolls became more common. The papier-mâché was molded into the shape of a doll by machine, then a face was added. The doll makers tried to create dolls as realistic as possible by shaping wax, bisque, which is an unglazed pottery, or china for the doll's faces. Then the body and limbs of the doll would be covered with cloth to make them softer. And that information is from Barbie, a visual guide to the ultimate fashion doll by Dorling Kinserly. During these Victorian times, dolls were dressed like miniature adults, just as the children were of the time. The more expensive the doll, the more detailed and fashionable the costumes were. Dolls soon started being made out of plaster of Paris instead of papier-mâché because it was easier to cast, but it was very fragile. Dolls were breaking all the time and needed to be replaced more often. German doll makers switched this out for porcelain because it was still easy to cast, but slightly less fragile than the plaster of Paris. Then, at the end of the 16th century, paper dolls became popular. In Europe, they were sold in sheets. Often they were hand-colored before sale and came with a large colored wardrobe. Dolls were becoming more and more advanced as the years passed. Gutta percha, which is a type of Malayan rubber, came to Europe in 1840, and Goodyear Rubber Company, the tire company now, started to use it. When they invented the vulcanizing process in 1851 to make hard rubber, doll makers ate it up. Soon, dolls could swivel their heads. The faces of dolls were still pretty plain, though. In the 1890s, when sleeping eyes were invented, sleeping eyes became the eyes that dolls had that closed when they laid down and opened when they sat up. In the early 1900s, dolls became cheaper. They were being made with celluloid, an early form of plastic, and a flesh-colored skin. The flesh-colored skin was plastic with pigment, and then it was varnished. These dolls only had heads made out of plastic. The first true plastic doll was made in East Germany many years after World War II. Her name was Bild Lilly. These plastic and vinyl dolls made it possible to create a washable and kissable doll that didn't lose its color. Now, there were more and more innovations being made in the doll, and they just kept coming. In 1957, it became possible to root dolls' hair directly onto their heads instead of having to glue wigs directly to the surfaces. After that, dolls could walk and talk. A very popular doll that could do both was Chatty Cathy. Girls were amazed to find that when they pulled the ring on the back of her neck, Chatty Cathy said many different random phrases. This was a very new thing. Another new concept was the fashion model doll. They were 8 to 12-inch paper dolls that came with many outfits. Some outfits, though, were sold separately. Normal 3D dolls were made to look like babies, but once rock and roll became more popular, the idea of the teenage doll was born. They were being sold wearing nylons and fashion outfits. These dolls soon paved the way for arrival of the ultimate teen doll, Barbie. Barbie, the 11.5-inch fashion doll created in 1959 by Ruth Handler, Ruth got the idea to make the 3D plastic doll when she saw her daughter Barbara playing with paper dolls. Ruth thought it would be much easier to change the doll's clothes if it was sturdy and 3D. Later that year, Ruth went to Germany and found the 11.5-inch doll built Lily. Then she knew she should pursue her idea. Lucky for Ruth, her family owned the Mattel Toy Company, so it didn't take long for her dream to become a reality. Doll manufacturers design a doll from idea to toy. First, they draw a simple sketch, then they color it in, and then fine-tune it. Next, they sculpt the model of the doll out of wax, and then once the design is approved, a master mold is made. Hundreds of production molds are copied from this master mold. Next, the dolls are formed. There are two major forming processes to make dolls. There's rotational molding, which is used to make the heads and limbs, and blow molding, which is used to make the torsos. Rotational molding is used for the heads and limbs because it's easier to make all shapes and sizes, and it still keeps them with uniform wall thickness. It works by filling the molds with plastic and then heating them. During heating, the molds rotate on two axes until the plastic cools. Blow molding is usually used for the torsos because it's easier and cheaper. The melted plastic is blown into the mold until the mold is filled, and then the plastic is hardened. After molding, the parts are removed from the molds and trimmed. Once the parts are clean, the face and hair are applied to the head. Airbrushing is used for the face, and sometimes it's so complex it has up to 15 steps. This is how the skin is decided, and this is the hair. The hair is rooted synthetic fiber added by using a special sewing machine that inserts the hair into the head, and that's the face being painted. Next, the body is assembled. Lastly, the doll is dressed, posed, packaged, and checked. All plastic dolls must meet certain safety regulations set by the CPSC, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. The dolls must pass hundreds of tests to be considered safe under normal use. Handler's first Barbie had to undergo all of these steps before it debuted in 1959 at the New York City Toy Fair. The Barbie, Ponytail Barbie number 1, was only sold for $3, but buyers were still skeptical of the new teen doll. They were nothing like the baby dolls children had played with in the past. Barbie would become the new American fashion doll with endless fashions, sold separately, of course. Barbie had always been made by Mattel Toy Company and had been in constant production since 1959. Barbie is an 11.5-inch tall, but she has some friends that were taller and shorter than her. Her boyfriend Ken, who's taller, her sister Skipper, who's shorter, and her vintage friends Francie and Casey, who were also shorter. They have also been supersized Barbie dolls, some the size of small children. All of these dolls, if in good condition, are very collectible. Barbies started being collected in 1986, and this craze peaked in the 1990s. The different eras of collectible dolls were the vintage era, the mod era, and the modern era, which is now. Modern Barbies are commonly called pink box dolls because they're all available in pink boxes. Vintage Barbie is very collectible and will sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars if in mint condition. Most Barbies have been made of soft vinyl, but a few collector Barbies have been made of porcelain. Barbies are popular as children's toys and as collectibles, and that they are sold nearly worldwide in more than 140 countries. Barbie has an annual retail sale of almost $1 billion, and more than 1 billion Barbies and her family members have been sold since 1959, their creation. Barbie has been sold in so many places around the world that she has a major influence on all children and young teens that own her. Toy designers get tips from parent psychologists, educators, and children development specialists who know what consumers want and when kids are ready for certain types of toys. Some say Barbie is a bad influence for children. People on the web from Boston University say Barbie's neck is twice as long as the average human's, which would make it impossible for her to hold up her head. Her legs are 50% longer than her arms, longer than the normal 20% longer. And if a woman had the same measurements as Barbie, she would not have enough body fat to menstruate or to have children. Barbie is a treasured toy by many people across the globe, and she's also a young role model. She is a role model for young girls. she was modeled after Bill Lilly, who was modeled after a cartoon of a prostitute, and some parent groups think this is inappropriate. Barbie is a wonderful childhood memorabilia, valued collector's item, and has a bad influence on children that play with her. But Barbie was produced to be a good role model for young girls, as well as teenage girls. She has not accomplished her goal, according to some people. And if Barbie is so popular and cherished, and she can't be a good role model, what doll can? Thank you.